sat in the large chair that faced the Galactic Council chamber. The room was cold and made of dark stone that did not reflect light. Around him, 12 alien species sat in their own chairs, arranged in a circle that showed no one was higher or lower than anyone else. This was the way the council pretended to work, knew the truth. The council had rulers and servants, and humans were always the servants. He had been the human ambassador for 5 years. In that time, he had learned to read the small movements of alien bodies, the way us arms would move when they were about to lie, the sound a made when they were bored and did not care what you said, the color changes in a crystalline body when they were angry. Used these things to understand what was really happening in the meetings, not what the words pretended to say. Today, something felt different. The ambassador, whose name sounded like breaking glass when spoken in human language, had called this special meeting. All 12 species had to attend. This was unusual. Most decisions happened in smaller groups. When all 12 gathered, it meant something big was about to happen. They stood up. Its body moved with a sharp sound, like someone pulling glass across stone. The human colony at 7 has discovered something, they said. They found an anomaly beneath the ground. This anomaly is a natural form of technology that has never been seen before. The humans want to keep this discovery and study it themselves. This is not acceptable. Felt his heart beat faster. He knew about the discovery. The 7 colony had sent him the information 4 days ago. He had been studying it, learning what it meant. The humans had filed all the right papers. They had followed every rule. This discovery belonged to humanity. It was found under human permits. It was in human territory. The delegates spoke next. They were not as dominant as but they were smart and careful. The humans are right, they said. The discovery is in their territory. By our own laws, it belongs to them. Felt a small moment of hope. The elder stood up. He had lived for 500 years. He had seen species rise and fall. When they spoke, most species listened. This discovery is too important to be managed by humans, they said. They do not have the knowledge to use it correctly. They are still young as a species. We must take control of this for the safety of the galaxy. That is theft, said. He spoke quietly, but his words cut through the silence. Every alien turned to look at him. Humans were not supposed to speak unless asked a question. This was the rule. They made a sound like laughter. It was not a happy sound. The human speaks without permission, they said. This shows the problem. Humans do not understand their place. They do not understand that we make the decisions here, not them. Stood up from his chair. He was going to say something. He was going to fight. But then he understood that fighting with words would do nothing. The council had already decided. They had called this meeting just to tell him what they had chosen. His opinion did not matter. His people's property did not matter. His people's rights did not matter. The vote happened very fast. 11 species voted to take the discovery from the humans. Only the said no. 1 species against 11 was the same as 0. The human discovery at 7 belongs to the Galactic Council, they announced. The research will be given to the collective. The human colony will be paid a small amount of money for their trouble. This meeting is finished. Looked at each alien face. He looked for any sign of doubt or worry. He found nothing. They all believed that this was right. They all believed that humans should accept this and say thank you. He walked toward the door. The doors were very large, made of the same dark stone as the walls. Ambassador, they said, you are dismissed. You may return to your quarters. Did not stop walking. He did not acknowledge he pushed the doors open with both hands. The doors were heavy, but his anger made him strong. He walked out of the council chamber and did not look back. Behind him, he could hear the aliens talking and making their strange sounds. They were already moving on to other business. The human ambassador's exit meant nothing to them. Walked through the corridors of the council station. The station was a metal world built to hold many species with different needs. Humans needed oxygen and normal gravity. Most aliens on the station needed different things. So the council had built the station with sections for each species. Humans were kept in the small section at the bottom. This was not said, but everyone knew it. He reached the human communication room. Inside, he found Dr. Price looking at data on a screen, had been the human observer for 7 years. She went to every meeting. She recorded everything. She understood the council better than anyone else. They took it, said. Did not look surprised. She had seen this coming. What did you do? She asked. I walked out. Turned away from her screen. For a moment she just looked at. "You did what no human has ever done," she said. "You said no to the council." Sat down in a chair. His anger was starting to turn into something else. It was starting to turn into fear. Walking out might have been a mistake. The council could punish humanity for this. They could cut off trade. They could remove all human colonies from council space. But was smiling. "This changes everything," she said. "Do you understand that? No human has ever refused the council before, ever. We have always taken what they gave us and been grateful." "They will hurt us for this," said. "Maybe," said, "but maybe not. Maybe they will understand that we are not slaves anymore." Looked at the communication device on the wall. He could contact Earth. He could tell them what had happened. He could ask them what to do. But he already knew what they would do. They would be angry. They would want to fight. And for the first time in 300 years, Earth would be right to feel that way. Reached for the communication device. His hand was shaking, but his decision was clear. "Contact Earth," he said. "Tell them it is time." Message from Earth arrived in 12 hours. The response was clear and cold. Every human facility in Council territory would stop working immediately. The mining operations would shut down. The research centers would close their doors. The cargo ships would turn away from established trade routes. There would be no violence. There would be no threats. Humans would simply stop doing what the Council told them to do. In the collective space, the mining colony on Epsilon Prime suddenly went silent. The humans who worked there packed their equipment and left on the next transport. The supervisors did not understand what was happening at first. They thought it was a mistake. They sent messages asking the humans to come back. The humans did not respond. Construction stopped. The humans who operated the heavy machines climbed down from their equipment and walked away. The engineers stood watching, confused and angry. They had paid for this labor. They expected the machines to keep working until they said to stop. In 3 major cities across Council space, human computational centers shut down their systems. The lights went dark. The machines stopped running. The alien species that relied on these systems suddenly found their communications networks failing. Their defense grids went offline. Their civilian infrastructure became unreliable. The economic impact was felt almost immediately. The collective, which had promised the Council it could manage the 7 Discovery, had no way to transport the necessary equipment. All their cargo ships depended on human supply chain workers. Without the humans, nothing moved. They sent urgent messages to the Council, demanding that humans be forced back to work. The Council sent a threat. The humans ignored it. The who had voted against taking the Discovery used this moment to smile in their own way. They had known the Council was wrong. They had known the humans would not accept this. Now they would wait and see what happened next. They began to understand what they had not realized. The human presence in their space was not small or easy to replace. The humans had built themselves into everything. They had made themselves necessary. General Lisa stood in the military command center on Earth. She was watching reports come in from every human installation across Council space. All of them reported the same thing. All of them had followed orders. All of them had stopped working. "The Council is demanding we return to work," one of her officers said. "They say if we don't, there will be consequences." Lisa did not look away from the screens. "Let them make their demands," she said. "We will not listen until they give back what they stole." The Council tried negotiation. They proposed a compromise. They would give humans a small percentage of the benefits from the 7 Discovery. Humans would share the information with all Council species. It was a generous offer by Council standards. Now speaking directly for Earth gave them a simple answer: no. The Council tried pressure. They announced that all human trade licenses were suspended. They said that human colonies would lose their access to Council markets. They said that human ships would not be allowed in Council space. The humans had already stopped trading. They had already stopped moving ships through Council space. The pressure meant nothing. Days passed, then weeks. The economic situation in Council space became serious. The Federation, which depended on human technology for most of its power systems, began to fall behind. Their energy grids became unstable. Their hospitals lost power. They began to ask questions about why the Council was fighting with the humans. The Insectal, who had been controlled by the Council for 200 years, saw something interesting happening. The Council was not all-powerful. The Council could be hurt. They began to wonder what this might mean for their own situation. In quiet meetings, they reached out to Earth through secret channels. They wanted to know if Earth would be open to agreements outside the Council system. If humans were going to challenge the Council, they wanted to be on the winning side. Received the message in the middle of Earth night. It was an offer of alliance. It was an offer to work together outside the Council structure. Took this message to the United Nations. The leaders of Earth meeting in Geneva understood what this meant. The world could not remain isolated. They had to build something new. The offer to them was simple, yes. Within 1 week, the first official meetings between human and leadership began. They were not in Council space. They were in neutral locations, hidden from Council observers. The Council noticed the secret meetings. They demanded an explanation. They threatened to shut down all operations in Council space. The Council was fighting back. But it was too late. The Federation, seeing that other species were breaking away, started their own negotiations with Earth. If humans could survive against the Council, then they wanted to be part of that. They had endured Council domination for too long. They sent a quiet signal through back channels. They wanted to join any alliance that opposed the Council. They had nothing to lose. They had no power anyway. At least with humans, they might have a chance at something better. Each new species that joined the human alliance was like another piece of the Council structure breaking. The Council tried to respond with threats. They tried to respond with economic punishment. But nothing worked because the Council's power had been built on the idea that they were necessary. Humans had shown that they were not necessary. In the halls of the Council station, the ancient elder sat in his chamber looking at data on screens. The reports were clear. The Council was falling apart. 12 species had broken away or were in the process of breaking away. The alliance that had held for 10,000 years was cracking. The elder understood what had happened. Humans had done something that no other species had done. They had refused to accept their position. They had said no and meant it. This was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Because once one species refused, others would begin to wonder why they had to accept their own positions. The elder sent out a message. It said that they would be open to talking with the human alliance. The elder did not know what the future would hold, but he knew that fighting was not the answer anymore. The cascade continued. Species after species began to leave the Council. Some left quickly, some sent their refusals slowly, but they all left. The Council that had ruled for 10,000 years began to crumble, and it crumbled not because of military force, but because humans had simply refused to accept what they were told they had to accept. The Council could not allow this to continue. The old ways were breaking down. Species that should have been obedient were becoming independent. The leadership of the Council understood that only one thing would stop this movement. They needed to show that they were still the most powerful force in the galaxy. They needed to destroy the humans. The decision was not made in public. It was made in closed meetings between the Collective, the Defense Force, and 3 smaller species that still depended on the Council for protection. The plan was simple. A fleet would be assembled. The fleet would attack the human colony at Tau. The humans would be defeated quickly. All other species would see that challenging the Council was impossible. The fleet that jumped into Tau space was impressive. It contained 42 warships. The smallest was still larger than anything humans had ever built. The largest was a command vessel that had been in service for 800 years. No fleet had ever defeated it. The Council species believed the battle would be finished in hours. They did not know that humans had spent the last 6 months preparing for exactly this. General Lisa stood in the command center of the USHC Trenton, the human warship. It was smaller than any other military vessel in the known galaxy. By every traditional measure, it was outmatched so completely that comparison was almost impossible. But the Trenton was not a traditional warship. The humans had taken the gravitational technology from Seven. They had weaponized it. They had learned to bend space itself in ways that the older species had only theorized about. The weapons were not designed to destroy. They were designed to dismantle, to take apart the very structure of space around enemy vessels. Fleet in attack formation, one of Lisa's officers reported. They are moving to attack positions. Lisa watched the data on her screens. The alien ships were moving with the confidence of species that had never faced a real challenge. They had conquered planets. They had defeated rebellions. They believed themselves invincible. "Fire the gravitational array," Lisa said quietly. The Trenton's weapons activated. What happened next was nothing like traditional space combat. The alien ships began to tear apart, not from explosions, from stress, from the very fabric of space being pulled in directions space was never meant to go. A destroyer, proud and ancient, found its hull beginning to fracture. The metal of its body could not withstand the forces being applied to it. The ship did not explode in flames. It came apart like something being slowly unraveled. A carrier with a crew of 5,000 began to break at the seams. The crystalline structure that made up its hull started to separate, not damaged, separated. The internal structure of the ship could not maintain cohesion under the gravitational stresses. The Council fleet tried to respond. They fired their weapons at the Trenton, but the Trenton was also protected by gravitational distortions. The alien weapons passed through spaces that were no longer where they appeared to be. One by one, the alien ships were disabled. The humans did not destroy them. They could have. The humans knew they could have, but they did not. Instead, they simply made it so the ships could not function. The crews were evacuated. The humans even helped with the evacuation, sending shuttle ships to rescue alien soldiers. Within 20 minutes, the Council fleet was completely incapacitated. Not one alien life was lost. Not one ship was destroyed. But every ship in the fleet was rendered unable to move, unable to fight, unable to do anything but float helplessly in space. The message that came from the Trenton was calm and professional. "This is General Lisa of the human military. Your fleet has been disabled. We are offering the choice to evacuate or to be rescued. We will not harm you, but understand this. Any future attack will be answered with complete destruction. This was a demonstration. The next time will not be so merciful." The reaction across the galaxy was shock mixed with fear. The Council had been defeated, not in a long battle, not through cunning strategy. Defeated in 20 minutes by a species they had always treated as inferior. The implications spread quickly. If humans could do this, then the Council was not the supreme power. If the Council could be beaten, then serving the Council was not an investment in safety. It was a risk. They immediately formalized their alliance with humans. The Federation declared their independence from the Council. They demanded that their independence be recognized immediately. A quiet species that had never spoken in Council meetings announced that they were joining the human alliance. The Council tried to respond. They sent messages saying that the attack had been a mistake. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted to talk about sharing the 7 discovery after all. They wanted to discuss human representation in Council decisions. Received these messages in his office on Earth. He read each one carefully. Then he sent a simple response to each species that contacted him. Humanity is no longer interested in joining the Galactic Council. We are building something new. The old system is broken. If your species wants to be part of something better, you are welcome to join us. Otherwise, we will have no further negotiations. This statement was delivered with such finality that it shocked every species that heard it. Humans were not asking permission anymore. Humans were not grateful for scraps. Humans were announcing their intentions as though they were the powerful ones. Because they were. Price watched the response from her observation post. She had predicted that humans would challenge the Council. She had never predicted that humans would win so completely. She sent a private message too. "It is finished," she wrote. "The Council will not survive this. They cannot survive the knowledge that they can be beaten by someone they thought was weak. The entire structure that held them in power was built on the belief in their own invincibility. You have destroyed that belief." The Council tried one more time to assert control. They announced that any species trading with humans would be expelled from Council space. The announcement was met with silence and then with laughter. Because by now, there were more species outside the Council than inside it. The great alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years had been broken, and it was broken not by a superior military force or a clever conspiracy. It was broken because humans had said no and meant it, and had the strength to back it up. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. Everyone in the galaxy knew it now. The Council chambers were not as full as they used to be. The delegation had departed 2 weeks ago. Their ambassador had left a formal letter stating that they were withdrawing from the Council immediately and joining the Human Alliance. The letter was polite but cold. There was no room for negotiation. The Federation had left the day after. Their representatives had not even bothered with letters. They had simply packed their things and left on their ships. By the time the Council noticed they were gone, they were already in negotiations with Earth. The who had served the Council in silence and obedience for 200 years had sent a message that was more powerful than any military weapon. They announced that they were leaving Council space entirely. They would be joining the Human Alliance. Every would be leaving, every facility would be closed, every obligation would be ended. This was the message that truly frightened the Council. Because they had been the most obedient of all the species, they had never questioned anything. If they were leaving, then no species was truly bound to the Council anymore. Loyalty could not be forced. It had only been accepted because alternatives had not existed. Now alternatives existed. The elder sat in his private chamber, watching the communications as species after species departed. He had lived for 500 years. He had never seen anything like this. The Council structure, which had seemed eternal and unchangeable, was disintegrating like ice in a sun. He called for his advisors. "What do we do?" one asked. "If we also leave, the Council ceases to exist." "The Council is already ceasing to exist," the elder said. "We are simply deciding whether we will be part of what comes next, or whether we will cling to something that no longer holds power." They sent their notice of withdrawal the next morning. It was not an angry departure. It was a recognition of reality. The Council had lost its power. By remaining, they would also lose power. The only logical choice was to leave and join whatever new structure was replacing it. The collective tried to hold on. They announced new benefits for species that remained loyal. They offered to share technology. They offered to reduce the tribute payments that smaller species had to make. But offers of benefit only worked when you had power to back them up. Now, everyone could see that they did not have that power anymore. They lasted another week before their leadership also submitted a withdrawal notice. Received the notice from in his office. He read it twice to make sure it was real. The species that had led the assault on human rights, that had stolen the Seven Discovery, that had tried to destroy the human fleet, was now asking to join the Human Alliance. He sent a simple response. "The Human Alliance welcomes species that are willing to work as equals. But understand this. Your past actions will be remembered. Trust will need to be earned. We will work with you, but we will do so with our eyes open." It was the most diplomatic way to say that they would not be trusted easily. But it was also an offer, a chance to be part of something new instead of clinging to something dead. The representatives sent back a message saying they understood. In the halls of council stations across the galaxy, species were packing their belongings. The diplomatic offices that had stood for centuries were being closed. The historical records were being moved. The symbols of council authority were being taken down. Price stood in the observation chamber one last time. She was watching the exodus. Species representatives from 100 different worlds were moving through the corridors. They were not leaving in anger or fear. They were leaving because they had made a choice. A choice to be equals instead of subjects. The ships departed first, their fleet moving away from council space with formal acknowledgement but no backward glances. They followed with 6 massive cargo vessels filled with their people and their possessions. They sent thousands of small transport ships, each one carrying a family or a community to new homes in human space. The smaller species that had always depended on the Council began negotiations with the Human Alliance about what they would need to make the transition. The humans did not demand payment or service. They asked only that each species contribute something valuable to the new alliance. Some offered military cooperation. Some offered scientific knowledge. Some offered agricultural products or manufacturing capabilities. Each species was told that what they offered would be valued equally. There was no hierarchy based on technological advancement or military power. This was the true revolution, not the military victory, not the refusal to obey. The revolution was the statement that different species with different capabilities and different positions could work together as true equals. The station that had held the council chambers stood nearly empty. The great hall where 12 species had sat in a circle of false equality was being prepared for something else. The humans had requested that the station be converted into a neutral meeting space for the new alliance, a place where all species could gather without the weight of history pressing down on them. On Earth, the United Nations Assembly voted to begin the process of accepting 23 species into the Human Alliance. Each would have equal voting rights. Each would have representation. Each would have voice. Some of the oldest nations on Earth questioned whether this was wise, whether trusting alien species so completely was safe. Addressed these concerns in a speech that was broadcast across the planet. For 300 years, humanity has stood at the periphery of galactic civilization. We have been told that we are young and inexperienced. We have been told that we must wait until we are ready. But I have learned something in this time. The old council was not stronger than us. It was just more confident in its right to rule. We are stronger because we are willing to share power. We are stronger because we treat different species as equals. That is the advantage that will carry us forward. The exodus continued for 3 months. By the end, the Galactic Council, which had existed for 10,000 years, was officially dissolved. The last representative left the station. The doors to the chamber were sealed. The age of the Galactic Council had ended not with an explosion or a revolution, but with a quiet recognition that something new was taking its place. 17 species had joined the human alliance. More were joining every week. The new alliance did not have the military might of the old council at its peak, but it had something stronger. It had unity based on choice, not on force. It had trust based on treatment as equals, not on fear of those with more power. In her quarters on the old council station, Price prepared to return to Earth. She had watched the birth of something new. She had seen the future of galactic civilization being born. It was not built on dominance. It was built on the simple idea that all species were worth something, and all species had the right to be heard. 1 year after the council was dissolved, a new station was completed in orbit around Earth. It had been built by a coalition of 17 different species working together. Each species had contributed something. The provided advanced construction techniques. The supplied the energy systems. The designed the environmental controls. The worked on the interior structures. Humans provided the overall vision and the central coordination that tied everything together. The station was called the Unified Alliance Station. It was not the same as the old council chambers. It was better designed. It was built for cooperation rather than for hierarchy. Stood on the central observation deck and looked at the approaching representatives from every allied species. Today was the first official session of the Unified Alliance of Sentient Species. There would be no rulers and no servants. There would be only equals making decisions together. The representatives entered in the order they were arriving, not in any order that showed status or power. The elder came in and chose a seat. The ambassador sat down next to him. The representative, the leader, the negotiator, and representatives from every other allied species took their seats around a circular table. No seat was higher or lower than any other. Called the meeting to order. "We have come together as equals," he said. "We have left behind a system that told us that some species were better than others. We have left behind a system that gave power to the strong and demanded obedience from the weak. Today we begin something different." The first vote was about the 7 discovery. This was the object that had started everything. The gravitational technology that had been the reason the Council had stolen from humanity and tried to destroy them. The proposal on the table was simple. The discovery would belong to all members of the Alliance. Scientists from every species would work together to understand it. The benefits would be shared equally. There would be no special advantage for any single species. The vote was unanimous. Every species voted in favor, not because they were forced, not because they felt they had to, but because the idea of sharing made sense. It was better to have access to the technology with the cooperation of other species than to have ownership of it alone. "This is what we are building," said after the vote. "A system where we all win together instead of a system where some win by taking from others." The next 3 days were filled with decisions. The Alliance had to establish rules about trade. It had to determine how to handle disputes between species. It had to create a military structure that would protect all members without dominating any of them. The elder had an idea about the military. "We should not have a single commander," he said. "We should have representatives from every species who share command equally. This way, the military serves all of us, not any single power." The idea was adopted. A military command structure was created where every species had equal say in military decisions. This meant that decisions would take longer sometimes. It meant that there would be disagreements. But it also meant that no single species could use military power to dominate the others. General Lisa was named the military coordinator. It was not a position of supreme command. It was a position that meant she had to work with commanders from every other species. She accepted the position with a clear understanding that her old power as a human military leader would be reduced significantly. "That is the point," she said in her acceptance speech. "I do not want power over other species. I want to work with them. The old way was that military power came from having the strongest army. The new way is that military strength comes from all of us working together. That is stronger than any single army could ever be." Price was appointed as the liaison between the scientific communities. She would work with researchers from every species to coordinate the study of the Seven Discovery. She would make sure that information was shared fairly and that all species had equal access to what was being learned. The who had been treated as inferior beings for 200 years were given a role in deciding the governance structure. Every member of the alliance pointed out that they had survived under oppression by being smart and careful. These were qualities that would be valuable in helping create systems that were fair. They responded with ideas that surprised everyone. They proposed systems for preventing corruption. They suggested ways to make sure that smaller species could not be ignored by larger ones. They offered solutions that had come from their experience of being powerless. These ideas were adopted into the foundation of the new alliance. 2 months into the new government, the first real conflict came. Two species disagreed over mining rights in a particular region of space. The conflict had the potential to break the alliance apart if it was not handled carefully. Rather than having a strong authority figure make a decision, the alliance created a council of equals from all species to hear both sides. Both species presented their case. The other representatives listened. Discussion happened. Arguments were made. But eventually a compromise was reached that both species could accept. The mining would be shared. The profits would be divided. Both species would benefit. When the decision was announced, several species seemed surprised that the conflict had been resolved so easily. Realized why. In the old council system, conflicts were resolved by power. Whoever had more authority won. This system was different. It did not matter who had more ships or more resources. What mattered was finding a solution that everyone could live with. Sometimes this meant that the most powerful did not get everything they wanted, but everyone got something. Everyone walked away feeling like they had been heard and treated fairly. This was stability that would last. This was peace that was built on something stronger than force. On Earth, the United Nations announced that they were officially incorporating human space into the unified alliance system. Earth would no longer be governed solely by human authority. It would be governed by a mixture of humans and representatives from allied species. Cities would have mixed populations. Humans would live in the same places as and. Some people on Earth feared this change. Some believed that humanity should keep power for themselves. But most understood that humanity was stronger when they were partners with other species, rather than isolated and weak on the edges of galactic civilization. A year after the first alliance meeting, it was time to celebrate what had been accomplished. Representatives from every species gathered at the central station. They were planning a festival, a celebration of the new age. Food from every species would be served. Art would be displayed. Music from different worlds would be played. Walked through the station with Price, watching the preparations. Around them, alien species and humans worked together. An elder was helping a young human with heavy equipment. A scientist was discussing something with a researcher. A family was eating lunch with human colleagues. "Do you think it will last?" asked. Looked around at the cooperation happening in front of him. "Yes," he said, "because it is built on something real. It is built on equals treating each other as equals. The old council was built on the idea that some species were better than others. That idea eventually breaks. But the idea that all species have value, that all species deserve to be heard, that idea is strong. That will last." The festival happened under the stars, with Earth visible in the background. Species that had been enemies 6 months earlier were dancing together. Humans and aliens were sharing meals and stories. The old order had ended. The new order was being built every single day. And it was better than anyone had expected.